back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports, breaking down these rookies from the 2022 class so you can go out there and beat the market in your Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues. And today we're talking about Jameson Williams. Despite being a highly touted guy, a guy that is going first round in every single Dynasty rookie draft right now, the variance on him is still pretty high. I've seen him as high as some people's wide receiver 2 in this class, wide receiver 3. I've seen him as low as the wide receiver 7 for other folks. We have him somewhere in the middle there. I think he's our consensus wide receiver 5 right now in our rookie rankings. I have him right behind Sky Moore, but ahead of George Pickens. And I think the easy kind of value play in Dynasty for Jameson Williams is if you are still in a rebuild, I think Jameson Williams is the perfect player to take because he's coming off the ACL injury that he sustained in the national championship game. They keep putting out these reports that he's going to be ready by the start of the season. I hope for Jameson's sake, for the Lions' sake, that they just let him take the time he needs to get fully recovered. Just rely on Amon-Ra St. Brown for a few more weeks. Let Jameson Williams ease back in slowly because when you rush guys back, it's a higher probability that they're going to get injured, whether it's overcompensating for a weak ACL, whether it's a re-aggravation of the injury. We don't want to see that with Jameson Williams. That would absolutely crush his value. But the reason you want him if you're in a rebuild is because he's not going to be putting up tremendous points. He's not going to be at his 100% fantasy point output in year one, most likely. And if he does, it's going to be later in the season once he's had time to fully recover from the ACL injury. But what's so crazy about Jameson Williams is the fact that he was buried on the depth chart in Ohio State in 2019 and 2020. And then as a junior, just went absolutely nuclear. Probably the most impressive overall season. If we just had to take one season-long stat line, I know Sky Moore had some insane years. Guys like Treylon Burks had insane years. Drake London was putting up like 150 yards a game. But if you look at what Jameson Williams did as a 20-year-old junior in the SEC at the University of Alabama, almost 1,600 receiving yards, 19.9 yards per reception. That's one of the best in the country, if not the best. That's Jalen Waddle level of efficiency. Also added 352 special teams yards and 2 touchdowns on special teams as well. So this is a versatile weapon. This is a guy who is a field stretcher plus. Tyler Lockett type of speedster that can play on the outside, isn't going to win necessarily just through physicality, but explosiveness, burst in the open field. And that's what you see a lot from Jameson Williams on tape, which is why he's so exciting. The only reason he's not higher in this class above like a guy like Chris Olave for us, I think it's just because we're worried coming into the NFL with an ACL tear, what that's going to do for Jameson Williams' value if he gets hurt again or doesn't even play in year one. That's certainly going to impact his value dynasty-wise.
Yeah, man. Jameson Williams, to me, is honestly the hardest profile to figure out of all these top names because you said it. It's so weird that he went to Ohio State for 2 years and did literally nothing, transfers to Alabama, and has such a nuclear season that he is not only an early declare, but one of, if not the best wide receiver in college football last season. And he showed the explosiveness. Like any given play, no matter where he gets it on the field, it can go to the house. So from a fantasy football perspective, like that's what we want. He can win at all 3 levels, and he has the yards after catch ability to take anything to the house. And that's the upside you want to see. Shout out to playerprofiler.com. They have his best comp as Will Fuller, which I think is a really interesting way to think about Jameson Williams and the way he plays. Always has that potential for a big play, but he's not a bad wide receiver in that mid-tier and that close to line of scrimmage game either. And with Jameson Williams, you mentioned Jalen Waddle, and we didn't even plan this, but that's someone I was going to bring up, not just because of the helmet scouting, but you really are hoping for a Jalen Waddle level outcome with Jameson Williams. Now, I know Jalen Waddle's injury with his ankle last season, it wasn't an ACL. It wasn't as late in the year as Jameson's was either. So Waddle's, training camp and rookie season week 1 were never really in question. But one reason you were a little bit on the fence about Waddle for Dynasty last year was just the lack of sample size in college and the lack of testing and some of the things that we see these rookies do. And while Waddle did have 3 seasons of production where Jameson Williams really did nothing until 2021, Waddle never was really a high volume player at Alabama. So he was used on special teams. He made some big plays in the receiving game, but he was never a high volume guy. We didn't see as extensive of a sample size as we would have liked to on any given season. Battled an injury there at the end, didn't get to see the testing, then comes in and is an early round 1 pick in the NFL draft. And the NFL is telling us, hey, we know we didn't see everything from this guy, but he's good enough, and we believe even dealing with an injury right now that he's going to be a great player. So Jameson Williams, it just comes down to your risk tolerance. I think you said it best. If you're a rebuilding team, take Jameson Williams. I love that he is an early declare. He's only 21 years old. If he was to not play a single snap this season, he could be coming into 2023 still at age 22, fully healthy and ready to go. And I think, that's worst case scenario. Realistically, best case scenario, he could be ready for week 1. I think that's unlikely. I think the most likely outcome is he probably starts on the pup, probably gets going somewhere mid-season. But we've seen rookies in the past that are hyper-talented really stunt that learning curve and have crazy rookie years. Odell Beckham Jr. missed the first several games of his rookie season, came in and went absolutely nuclear. And then with Jameson Williams as well, in terms of landing spot, yes, they have him on Raw. Yes, they have TJ Hawkinson. Yes, they have DeAndre Swift. They brought in DJ Chark. None of those guys profile to be the number 1 true alpha wide receiver that Jameson Williams does. So if Jameson Williams hits, it will be, hey, how do we find targets for Amon-Ra, Hawkinson, and Chark, rather than how do we find targets for Jameson Williams, because he certainly would command his own. So with JMO, there is some risk tolerance involved if you want to take him ahead of some of these other names in the first round, ahead of your Olaves, ahead of Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, or Drake London. But for me, I like Jameson Williams. I'm probably not taking him until the 108 or the 109, just because I want to see how he plays coming off that injury. And I think that's a little bit too much of a risk for me in the early first round when there are so many good wide receivers this year.
You would hate to see Jameson Williams get Paris Campbell, right? Where it's a guy who is a touted stud from a prolific college program, but just starts dealing with injuries early in his career, can't seem to get it going. I know there's reports that Paris Campbell might be 100% fully healthy. It's been unluck across the board. Just bad luck with Paris Campbell in his career so far. You pray that doesn't happen for Jameson Williams. But we haven't even talked about the draft capital, oddly enough. I mean, 12th overall in the 2022 NFL draft. That is something to write home about. And this could be a team in Detroit that could end up with a premier quarterback a year from now once this rebuild's complete after filling in. Okay, now we have our wide receiver 1. We have our wide receiver 2. We have the tight end that we took in the second round in Hawkinson. We have the stud running back. We have Penei Sewell. We have all these cornerstone assets. Now we just drop the quarterback as the cherry on top, and this could be a really interesting Detroit team. And if we see some big weeks from DJ Chark, who I've taken and really, really late in a few best ball drafts, that role in and of itself could look super appealing going into 2023 where, hey, we saw the pop games from DJ Chark. We saw Jameson Williams show flashes. 2023 would be his year. And I think it's not going to take much for the hype train to build behind Jameson Williams. If we see him on the field 2 or 3 games, under 50% snap share, but the flashes happen, he takes a screen pass 40 yards, he has a deep touchdown reception, people are going to be clawing to try to get Jameson Williams from you in these dynasty rosters.
Steph, I have one of the hottest takes I think I've ever said on this show before.
Oh, here we go.
I think the Lions are a sneaky team to make the wild card this year.
Whoa.
I think the Lions, they have the pieces. Like, what is the weakness on this team? You said they have a great offensive line.
It's
now you have Amon-Ra, and you have DJ Chark, and you have hopefully Jameson Williams sooner rather than later, TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift. Like, offensively, other than the quarterback position, they have one of the best units on paper in the NFL. Yes, I know Jared Goff can be a liability, but last year he was fine. I mean, he wasn't great, but he could be a check down Charlie and be fine. And now you elevate those. Who was he throwing to last year? Amon-Ra didn't get ramped up until the end, and they were like, oh, snap, we drafted this guy, and he's actually pretty good. Before that, it was Josh Reynolds and Quintez Cephas, and Jared Goff still put up 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 67% completion percentage. So you filter in some better weapons. You give him a good offensive line, a running game, a running back that can catch the football. Jared Goff is not dust. Like, he's 27 years old. He had some decent seasons in LA. He might be decent this year. You got Aiden Hutchinson now on the defensive side of the ball, and you're bringing in pieces over there as well. They could be sneaky close to 500 this year. And even if they are, they still have that extra first-round pick that they got for Matt Stafford in that trade. So even if they are a mid-round pick next year, they could package that with a late first, try to move up into the top 10 and take a quarterback in a deep class, and that could be the cherry on top. And who knows, if they are close to 500, maybe Jared Goff could provide and prove some sort of trade value for himself now that that contract has been paid out a little bit more as well.
10th in pace of play, 12th in team pass
Dan
plays
Campbell
per game.
season. Let's go.
This looks like Detroit is going to have fantasy output somewhere. Who knows if it'll be a DeAndre Swift week, a TJ Hawkinson week, and Amon-Ra St. Brown week. But this is kind of building, right, this wind in the sails for Jameson Williams, where the second he steps on the field, it's a passive game script. They're down a ton. They start airing it out, and it looks like the old Jared Goff to Brandon Cooks type connection that we saw in LA. You're actually getting me pretty hyped for what this situation could be down the stretch in 2022 and in 2023 in that division with the Packers, the Lions, the Vikings, and the Bears.